Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea reports more than 300 new cases of COVID-19, the first time that's happened since August. At intensive care units, they're running out of beds. The South Korean biohealth sector, under a new plan, will invest more than $9 billion over the next 3 years in research and training to make the country a bioindustry powerhouse. And a wide-ranging social survey finds changing attitudes to marriage and starting families. A majority of South Koreans feel it's okay for couples to live together without being married. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea has reported more than 300 cases of COVID-19 in a single day for the first time since August, when the country was hit by a second wave of the virus. Intensive care units are reportedly running out of beds. Our Kim Yeon-sung reports.
South Korea on Wednesday reported 313 cases, 245 of which were local transmissions. This is the highest spike since late August, when the country reported 323 cases. Hospitals are feeling the pinch of this sudden increase in cases. ICU beds have reached almost 80% capacity, leaving only 119 intensive care beds available. The bed shortage is most acute in the Greater Seoul area, Gangwon-do Province, and Jeollanam-do Province. Some experts are even saying that South Korea is at the start of a third wave of the outbreak.
There have been a total of 3 infection waves, the one in Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, the outbreak in August, and the outbreak now. The latest infections are taking a toll on the medical capacity, so it's apt to see the current situation as the third wave.
181 of Wednesday's local transmissions were from the Greater Seoul area. Seoul City alone saw 91 cases. Some recent clusters in the capital include a sports facility in Seongdong-gu District, a sauna in Seocho-gu District, and a hiking club. Research centers for Samsung Electronics in Suwon, Gyeonggi-do Province, and LG Electronics in Seoul also reported one of their workers had tested positive. The buildings have been closed down to prevent the infection from spreading to other employees. Experts say that an outbreak in the capital is especially dangerous as the region is home to more than half of South Korea's population, and the virus could spread quickly through the densely populated region. Kim Yeon-sung, Arirang News.
Vaccines usually require years of research and testing before they go to clinical trials, but 2 American companies are almost done with the whole process in a matter of months. Now, Pfizer is about to apply to the FDA for emergency authorization in the U.S. so its vaccine can be used. Min Soo-kyun reports.
The World Health Organization has so far listed 202 COVID-19 vaccine candidates, 47 of which are currently undergoing clinical human trials. At least 10 are in the third and last phase of testing, most of which are being developed by American or Chinese companies. On Monday, U.S. pharmaceutical giant Moderna said its experimental vaccine was 94.5% effective at preventing the virus during a preliminary analysis of its phase 3 trial. It also said the vaccine only requires standard refrigerator temperatures of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for 30 days and can be stored for up to 6 months at minus 20 degrees, making it more readily available to all. The results came a matter of days after Pfizer made a similar announcement. Pfizer earlier reported that its potential coronavirus vaccine had an efficacy rate of more than 90%. The U.S. company is moving fast in the vaccine race, reporting it will soon seek emergency authorization for its vaccine. At a virtual conference hosted by the New York Times on Tuesday, Pfizer said it was preparing for submission without specifying the exact timing of when it will file them with the FDA. Other pharmaceutical companies across the globe are also speeding up their efforts to fight the pandemic, which has infected over 55 million people worldwide. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
The FDA in the U.S. has given emergency use authorization to the first COVID-19 test kit for use at home. Made by the company Lucira Health, the FDA says the test gives a result in under 30 minutes. There have been kits authorized for collecting samples before, but this one yields a result with no need to send the samples off for separate analysis. For those younger than 14 years of age, the samples have to be collected by a healthcare provider. The company's website says it's planning for the kit to cost less than $50. Meanwhile, the U.S. has now more than 11.6 million infections and has had more than 250,000 deaths. Under a plan announced today, the South Korean biohealth industry is going to invest billions of dollars over the next few years to make the country a bio-industry powerhouse. It's expected that the plan will create around 9,000 jobs as well. Kim Min-ji reports.
South Korea's biohealth companies will be investing over $9 billion by 2023 as part of efforts to boost their competitiveness and create some 9,000 new jobs. President Moon Jae-in announced a plan Wednesday pledging all-out efforts on the government's part as well to nurture the biohealth industry as a new growth engine.
이제 대한민국은 바이오 의약품의 생산 기지를 넘어 바이오 산업 강국으로 도약할 것입니다. 바이오 산업의 경쟁력은 사람과 아이디어에 의해 결정됩니다. 창의적 인재와 아이디어의 육성을 위해 자유롭게 연구하고 소통할 수 있도록 지원하겠습니다.
Moon visited the country's biohealth hub in Songdo, Incheon, which is home to local companies such as Celltrion and Samsung Biologics, as well as research institutes affiliated with the country's top universities. Under the plan, the largest chunk will be directed at developing medicines, while the remainder will be used to invest in startups or medical equipment and healthcare sectors. Noting that it's an industry that South Korea can excel in, Moon said the government will foster some 47,000 bioexperts by 2025 and also increase the budget set aside for research and development next year by 30% to $1.5 billion. Moon said that the biohealth industry is turning the COVID-19 crisis into an opportunity, voicing hope that South Korea could see its first treatments by the end of this year at the earliest.
우리는 코로나를 극복하며 K-바이오의 잠재력을 전 세계에 알리고 있습니다. 백신과 치료제 개발도 진척을 보여 빠르면 올해 말부터 항체 치료제와 혈장 치료제를 시장에 선보일 수 있을 것입니다.
South Korea's biohealth industry has seen steady growth in recent years. Exports in the sector this year have topped $10 billion for the first time as of the end of October. Exports of medicine and medical equipment last year totaled $8.9 billion. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good afternoon and thank you for coming on today.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, we see now that Korea's hospitality industry took another big hit in September. It contracted by the most in history back in March as the pandemic took hold, and then it seems the second wave in August caused another decline. Tell us about that.
First of all, it should be noted that one of the hardest hit industries by COVID shock would be lodging and restaurant, because they are direct targets of social distancing. When production index is below 100, it indicates business performance of given industry is worse than that of 2015, which is benchmark year. The production index for lodging and restaurant industries in September came to 79.7 after recording 70.6 in March at the peak of coronavirus. And that moved up again to almost 100 at 99.8 in July. So overall, the business performance of hospitality became really worse.
Well, Korea's exports, too, had strengthened in September a little bit, but they were down slightly in October. It seems the strengthening Korean currency may have been a factor in those numbers. What do you make of these figures, Professor?
A strong won is, of course, bad news to Korean export. But if we take a look at foreign exchange market, Korean won is surrounded by lots of factors that make Korean won stronger. From October, foreign investors purchased domestic stocks more aggressively, and Korean economy's current account surplus increased up to $10 billion in September. These are very strong factors of a stronger Korean won. Also, it is expected that Mr. Biden's administration will let U.S. dollars weaker for promoting U.S. export, and this is another factor of a stronger won. And actually, according to a recent survey, more than 60% of small and medium-sized exporting corporations are experiencing profit decrease due to strong won.
And just on the cusp of new all-time highs, stocks on Wall Street were down overnight, with data showing a decline in consumption last month. What's the story in the global markets?
U.S. Retail sales rose in October at their slowest pace since spring. It became another sign of nation's consumption, which covers almost 70% of GDP, and consumption is losing, of course, steam as coronavirus cases surge across the nation. Dow lost 0.6%, and Nasdaq also lost 0.2% in yesterday's market. Global market had mixed return over different regions. London and Frankfurt had negative returns, but Paris had 0.2 positive returns. Tokyo market had negative 1.1% due to profit taking by investors after 3 weeks continuous rise.
Well, Korean stocks were higher today, the KOSDAQ in particular. What happened in the local markets?
In domestic market, there were huge buys from foreign investors and domestic institutional investors. And because of that, KOSPI increased by 0.3%, and KOSDAQ also increased by 1.5% today. But on the other hand, small individual investors sold stocks today. Actually, along with expectations on economic recovery from vaccine development, plus cyclical stocks like insurance, banks, petrochemicals had big gains today.
Also big gains today. Bitcoin, it's at the highest it's been in almost 3 years, doubled from the beginning of the year. What's behind this sudden surge, and where do you see it going?
The main reason for rising Bitcoin is related with major governments like U.S. and EU member countries, massive monetary and fiscal expansions. Along with huge liquidity in the market, Bitcoin became attractive to investors as a substitute for conventional investment vehicles like stocks and bonds. But I have to say that this market is really volatile, so it is almost impossible to forecast Bitcoin price of the future. This market has some problems, actually institutional problems, so we have to be careful if we are investing in Bitcoin.
Sounds like good advice, Professor. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
A growing number of South Koreans are thinking that marriage might not be for everyone. According to a wide-ranging social survey by Statistics Korea, 6 in 10 people feel that it's okay for couples to live together when they're not married, and 3 in 10 feel that it's okay for them to have kids. Kim Jae-hee has the details.
More South Koreans are becoming open to the idea of unmarried couples living together and unmarried people having kids. This is according to a report released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday of a survey of some 38,000 people aged 13 or older carried out from May 13 to 28 this year. These two views have been getting steadily more popular since 2012. Less than 46% replied that unmarried couples can live together in 2012, but the percentage rose to almost 60% in 2020. Only around 22% said people can have kids without getting married in 2012, but by 2020, the figure rose to near 31%. Meanwhile, the report also showed 1 out of 3 of those surveyed believe the biggest source of anxiety in society is new disease. Almost 33% of people surveyed picked new disease as the biggest cause of anxiety, more than 11 times the 2.9% in 2018. The next biggest anxieties were economic risks with nearly 15%, crime with around 13%, and national security with more than 11%. Findings also showed that 4 out of 10 South Koreans studied using online media over the past year, and more than 9 out of 10 teenagers had studied online.
The COVID-19 pandemic had an impact on teenagers' high percentage of online learning as they began online classes in April.
The data also showed 5.2% of those surveyed had thought of committing suicide at least once in the past year, up 0.1 percentage points from 2 years earlier. Economic difficulties were the most common reason for suicidal thoughts. When it comes to the environment, fine dust is a major issue, with 3 out of 4 people worried about it. Almost 48% of people were worried about radiation, 46% were worried about harmful chemicals, and around 45% about climate change. Over half of the people surveyed were happy to pay more to protect the environment. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.